remains unclear as of yet. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Fox News contributor and Greg Gutfeld show correspondent Catherine Tenth is here. We like to call her Cat. And host of Kennedy on the Fox Business Network. We like to call her Kennedy. And in the center seat, Fox News contributor, host of UnPC on the Fox Nation, Tyrus. Hey, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I will not be out work today. I'm out.
Ooh, I like it.
I love Valentine's Day look.
And you popped it with a red tie to go with the buttonholes.
That's yes. That was an accidental stroke of genius, but
I'll
take it.
Own it.
I will own it.
All right, here we go. We're going to get to the news. The deal would keep the government open, but it provides less than a quarter of the $5.7 billion the president requested to build a wall on the border with Mexico. The president has floated taking executive action to get the additional money. Even Republicans in the Senate are expressing concerns. Here's Texas Republican Mac Thornberry.
I think it's a deal that most people are not very happy with. The question is, well, is it good enough to move forward? It does include a lot more than $1 for border wall. So it's got some good, it's got some bad. We got to go through it.
Facts of life.
Democrats. Did you say that's a fact of life?
No, that's saying you take the good, you take the bad.
Kennedy had a little, she had a little
80s moment there.
Well done.
Democrats say President Trump would face backlash from his own party if the shutdown is triggered. Watch.
I think the White House has no choice but to sign this bill or face, frankly, a revolt in the Republican ranks here in Congress. I don't think Republicans want another shutdown. It was disastrous for them and their brand, and it really hurt this president. They don't want to repeat that.
Vice President Mike Pence is in Poland, saying the president is keeping his options open as he considers the bill.
I know the president is considering that, as well as other authority he has as president of the United States to address what is a very real humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border. So I think the president's evaluating what's in the bill. He's also evaluating the authority that he has, and I know he'll be making a decision before the deadline this Friday.
Meanwhile, when it comes to a budget deal, a new Fox News poll finds 66% of voters favor a broad immigration deal, which includes a border barrier, security, and humanitarian aid. At the same time, support for a wall has reached its highest level since 2015, with 46% for it, 50% against it, a statistical tie. Tyrus, why do you think that's happening? Why do you think more people are in favor of a wall?
Well, I think it kind of mirrors the way our country is now. We're pretty much split down the middle on everything. I think if you live close to that situation, or you're dealing with a family member who's dealing with drug addiction and stuff like that, setting up a wall is very important to you. If it's not affecting you, if you're nowhere near that situation, or you benefit or profit from not having a wall, then of course you're against it. So again, we're split. Me personally, I'm for the wall. I think just because of the drug epidemic alone, and a deterrent, it's a great solution.
Kennedy?
Unfortunately, it's not a great solution. The war on drugs has been somewhat of a
legalize
failure.
it all.
And the prohibition of substances and people always put you in the same place, and that's with the black market. I understand that that a majority of people want some sort of border security, and that's fine. And Kat and I have talked about this a lot. That means you have to grossly curtail the entitlement state in this country, because you can't have both. You can't have, something like a Green New Deal, which I know we're going to talk about later, which is a grab bag and a free-for-all for everyone in every stage of life, no matter if they're unwilling to work. You can't have that and throw the door open and say, and all comers, come on inside.
Yeah, you can't have this huge open borders and a welfare state at the same time. I'm not exactly sure how Democrats think that that's supposed to work.
Unsustainable.
So why do you think, though, at this point, you've got a situation, the president says he wants to read it all. It's over 1,000 pages, so that will take a team. And it would take a team. I know I saw Congressman Garamendi, Democrat from California, on just a short time ago on America's Newsroom, and he was asked, have you read it? And he's like, no. Absolutely not. Not yet. It's going to take some time to do that. The American people are sliding in their support. So something's happening.
Yeah, he absolutely has to sign this. There's really no other option. He can't shut down the government again. I think he may try the executive route, but I think that would be a bad move, because in order to do this, he has to seize a lot of private property. And if you do it through Congress, there are protections, or rather authorizations, that protect the government and allow them to do that. If you do it through executive power, those aren't there, and lawyers would have a field day, and it could kind of kill the whole thing. So
as it did with President Obama.
Doing it the executive way could really backfire on Trump.
It's so interesting, though, to see people sliding toward that support for the wall, because it may be feeding into this, Melissa. Let's take a look at the latest Gallup poll for the President of the United States. His approval is back to pre-shutdown levels, back at 44% approval right now. During the shutdown, it was at 37 prior to that, and that number on the bottom is from October, way before the shutdown. It was at 44. How do you account for this?
Well, I do think it has to do with the State of the Union address that he gave. I mean, if you looked at the way that people received it, I think the larger media tries to present it like he's trying to build this racist wall at the southern border to keep people out. And really what it has more to do with is this idea that we need to have some sort of organization in terms of who comes into this country and who doesn't, based on the fact that there is a war on drugs, as you said, but there is also, we can't support everyone and give away stuff to everyone. So there has to be, and he sort of laid it out in a way that people got, that we're not talking about the Great Wall of China that's a racist thing to keep other people out. We're talking about a border barrier that's logical.
You know what else he did? He talked about those other two prongs and whether or not they could work without all three of the stool legs, right? He talked about technology, and he talked about the people and staffing up at Border Patrol. But he said a barrier or a wall, he still loves the word wall, no matter what the semantics.
And that's semantics.
Is necessary for those other parts to work.
To look at the bigger picture, this really isn't even about the wall anymore.
What's it about?
It's about 2020. It's about the election.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
The Democrats cannot allow him to be successful.
But they're allowing it.
Kind of.
This is more than a dollar.
Saying, like, you're not getting enough to do. We'll give you enough, but it's for broad.
Yeah, but Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, said $1. This is more than $1. Now it's far short of the $25 billion he wanted.
Can I ask
in the beginning.
a question about that? So you've got an 1,100-page document, and you've got a time crunch. That means there is a gun to their heads. They have to pass this legislation in order to avoid a politically toxic government shutdown. The second one, why would you write an 1,100-page bill when what you need is pretty straightforward? It should not require 1,100 pages. So that was done intentionally by someone, I don't know whom, and it seems to really mire the process.
Yeah, they don't have
and this is why people really give Congress those low double-digit, sometimes single-digit approval ratings, because 100%. The last time we saw something this pressed up against the clock was the ACA, the Affordable Care Act. And what did the Speaker of the House then?
What's in it.
Yeah, that's what Nancy Pelosi said. Now, those are not her words this time, but as you point out, and I said before, it's going to take a team of people. It can
why
be
did
done.
It take so long for this to be all set? I mean,
because it's 1,100 pages?
Yeah, why did it take so long, and why is it so many pages?
Amen.
I don't understand. I mean, for me, if my work isn't done, I'm not allowed to leave work. Well, Congress is the only job where they're like, oh, well, you know, it's not done, but I'm going to go on vacation. I mean, they're just allowed to do whatever they want.
You know, I'm looking through some of the paragraphs here, and the $1.375 billion for the fencing, the bollard fencing, with limitations to address community and environmental concerns is the first thing that's listed, Homeland Security Appropriations Bill, how the money would be spent. It's fascinating, Melissa. We are so far afield from that $25 billion that the president wanted, but if he can get this in other ways, as Kat pointed out, politically, how does that play?
It is the shifting language where he says this is a down payment on what I'm planning to do. So he can definitely spin it as a way forward, that this is the first step and we have many more to come after this. I think the zero was a big problem.
Can I add something on to that? I think the president's message of unity at State of the Union, he wants to make good on that. And he does that by signing this and then figuring out other ways to keep his base happy. But I do think seeing that 7-point poll bump You know, after the nadir of the shutdown. That's important for him, and he's going to sign it because that's going to get him more goodwill from those critical independents.
Well, Congressman Garamendi and potentially others, but certainly Garamendi first, is trying to protect, he says in a bill, funding for the allocation of crises or weather or whatever it would be away from the president's hands in terms of allocating money.
Well, they're just, like I said, they're trying to put him in a box so that they can say, this is what he tried to do, we stopped him, so it's a victory for us. And then the Republican side is going to say, well, we did get something, and it's only just the beginning.
Democrats used to talk about physical barriers, so this really is more about politics
100%.
than anything else.
Prophylaxis.
We'll scoot.
Good word.
The problems for Virginia Democrats, they're not going away. An attorney for one of the two accusers of Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax says he threatened her client with legal action of his own. The lieutenant governor denies both the assault allegations against him, whether Democrats need to take stronger action. Plus, we're awaiting that Senate confirmation vote this hour on Attorney General William Barr, nominee. And Democrats already geared up to take him on over the Mueller report. Stay with us.
When his report comes to you, with us as much as possible.
Consistent with the regulations and the law, yes.
News alert, the retail giant Amazon today says it will not be building a new headquarters in New York, which is a huge reversal after a year-long search for a location. Amazon has faced opposition from some New York politicians who were unhappy with the tax incentives Amazon was promised. The company says today it does not plan to look for another location and will continue to build out offices in Arlington, Virginia and Nashville, Tennessee. We're keeping an eye on this story and we'll bring you anything newsworthy as it happens.
Fox News alert, we are expecting a Senate confirmation vote to begin shortly on Attorney General nominee William Barr. Barr will immediately have to contend with questions over Special Counsel Robert Mueller's final conclusions, whenever they're released. Barr was pressed on that during his confirmation hearing. Listen.
When his report comes to you, will you share it with us as much as possible?
Consistent with the regulations and the law, yes.
Do you believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
Meanwhile, House Judiciary Committee Chairman Gerald Nadler reportedly has hired 2 veteran lawyers and Trump critics as his panel gears up to investigate the Justice Department and review Mueller's final conclusions whenever they're released. And over in the Senate, Senators Richard Blumenthal and Chuck Grassley have already introduced a bill that would require the Mueller report to be made public, removing the decision from the Attorney General. Kennedy, they're already firing up and setting up to dispute the outcome of this report. We don't even know when it's...
We have no idea what's in it. And anyone who thinks they know what's in it based on who's been indicted, who's been interviewed, the fact that the grand jury was extended for 6 months, the length of time, it's almost 2 years since the beginning of the special counsel investigation. No one knows what's in it. Therefore, if you have no idea, you can't set up a defensive posture. It's so ridiculous, but I do like that it is a bipartisan effort because no matter who the president is or who's bringing the charges, we deserve to see what's in it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's taken this much money and this much time and this much oxygen, then we absolutely have the right to
not
see.
Just that much money, but that much of our money.
That's right.
I mean, we have to remember the government is supposed to work for us. So there's really no reason why we shouldn't be able to see absolutely everything that we can possibly see about this. We should be able to know what they're up to and what they're doing because they work for us.
Yeah. Tyrus, is anyone going to be happy with the outcome?
Oh, absolutely. Except maybe me that it's over.
Oh, you like it?
No, I would like it to be over because I feel like it's the biggest spike in the division of this country is this report. And I think when the report comes out and it's not as Valentine's Day, so say it, when the report is not as sexy as everybody wants it to be, there's not going to be like unbelievable findings. It's going to be pretty much flat and kind of like maybe some hand slaps or those who made mistakes have already been prosecuted. So I think the Democrats are still on attack mode. So got to try to find something out of this. There's got to be something we can use in this, because again, all this goes to, if this doesn't land a huge, devastating blow to the President of the United States, then they're now in trouble for 2020
anything
again.
less
This is
than
all about
impeachment
2020.
and something that would result in impeachment, the Democrats are going to be very, very upset, and I don't see that happening. And they're going to try to, just like Tyra says, make huge mountains out of any little molehill that they can find.
And
They're
launch
very
new
good at that.
investigations in Congress.
Yep, absolutely.
Can I ask you a question, though, Kennedy? It was really like with a whimper's coverage almost this week, the Senate Intelligence Committee's bipartisan findings of no collusion and that coming to a conclusion. Does any of that matter, and why do you think it's been so quiet in coverage?
It will matter when the House version comes out, and of course House Democrats, who are now in charge of the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees, they're doing their own investigations, and that's when you know something is incredibly political and there's no more objectivity in Washington, when you have two committees and two houses looking at the exact same thing, coming to vastly different conclusions. So I guess in a way they cancel each other out. And to Tyrus's point earlier in the show, this is why people are so frustrated with Congress.
Interesting.
Harris, we watched William Barr when he was testifying, when they were, or actually when they were talking to him about this position.
Confirmation hearing.
Thank you. Yeah. And he was so calm and didn't take the bait when they sat there and went after him from so many different angles.
I have two theories.
Does that make you feel confident about how he's going to handle the attacks as he takes over?
So I have two theories on that, and one of them is because been there, done that. He's got this. That kind of rides in its own lane. Just the gravitas of sheer
He's already had the job.
The other is we found out from that he actually is pretty close, professionally aligned with Robert Mueller.
A lot of mutual respect.
And so there was a lot of, talk about that mutual respect, but also just like-mindedness in terms of getting the job done and making things as transparent as possible. What he didn't do, Melissa, if you remember, as we watched together, he didn't let any of the lawmakers box him into a promise about something that he hasn't seen yet in terms of that report, what needs to be redacted and what doesn't. So he's not going to sign on the dotted line to say, I'm going to just turn it over to the public, because we don't know. We don't know what's in it.
Even asking him that is absolutely crazy. What are you going to do with this thing you haven't seen?
Politically, though, don't they want to be on the record as having really pressed the candidate? Because, we already got word that Democrats were going to vote for his full nomination.
Right.
Doug Jones down in Alabama had said early on that he would.
I would have huge concerns if he was answering hypothetical questions with factual answers. I would have issue with that. He's like, yeah, absolutely, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Yeah. That's not what an AG does. So.
All right, we'll scoop. The White House and the Justice Department responding to new claims from former acting FBI Director Andrew McCabe. In a new interview with 60 Minutes, McCabe said he ordered an investigation into whether the president obstructed justice as a way to protect the Russia investigation from political interference. Watch it.
I was very concerned that I was able to put the Russia case on absolutely solid ground in an indelible fashion, that were I removed quickly or reassigned or fired, that the case could not be closed or vanish in the night without a trace.
McCabe also reportedly said that top Justice Department officials discussed whether to recruit cabinet members to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove President Trump from office, and that Deputy FBI Director Rod Rosenstein was serious in his offer to secretly record the president wear a wire. The Justice Department responded this way, quote, the Deputy Attorney General never authorized any recording that Mr. McCabe references. As the Deputy Attorney General previously has stated, based on his personal dealings with the president, there is no basis to invoke the 25th Amendment, nor was the Deputy Attorney General in a position to consider invoking the 25th Amendment, end quote. The president weighed in as well on Twitter. Many of the top FBI brass were fired, forced to leave, or left. McCabe's wife received big dollars from Clinton people for her campaign. He gave Hillary a pass. McCabe is a disgrace to the FBI and a disgrace to our country. Make America great again! Exclamation point. Just a short time ago, Vice President Pence had this to say about the 25th Amendment.
I find any suggestion of it to be absurd. I mean, look at what this president has accomplished. I have never heard any discussion of the 25th Amendment by members of this government, and I would never expect to.
McCabe was with the FBI from the FBI last March after caught lying to FBI agents about his contacts with the media. I want to unpack that and just start at the beginning with you, Tyrus. And the thing that stuck out, and I heard you speak on it, one man said he had to protect the entire investigation should he leave. I thought it was a team effort.
Well, unfortunately, this has nothing to do with truth or justice. This has to do with book sales. He needs something to come out to get people to buy his book. I always thought, when I think of a great man in the FBI, when you ask them about their career, you ask them about their stuff, they're like, that's business. We don't discuss those matters. It used to be integrity and honor when you had that
Did
position.
James Comey change that?
Comey changed it, and that's another thing, too, where, like, these guys are cashing in on the Trump book. If you write a book about Trump, which I guess we all should do, so we can make some money.
Woo.
And with the Mueller report coming out, he's like trying to get that last little stuff in, because when the stuff comes out, if it doesn't match up with what he's talking about, his book's a dud. So he drops these hellacious things where his peers are like, "What are you talking about? This isn't true. It's about a book. It's not about honesty, integrity."
But we already know that he's a liar.
And we're a better country for him not having his
You
job.
make the point that he was fired for leaking and then lying about it. The only problem with this one is that when he says that they sat in the room and they talked about wearing a wire in the 25th Amendment, we know that the FBI General Counsel James Baker is on record corroborating it, saying that it was true, that they did have that conversation, they were considering it. And in my mind, to have these people standing in the room and talking about this is really pretty scary, because you're talking about a duly elected president and they're talking about getting rid of him. And it reminds me of, the ruling class that exists in Washington and this group of entrenched players on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, who have ascended to power and are desperate to hang on to it, and I think are terrified of somebody who comes in who doesn't have those ties and doesn't want to just kowtow to the ruling class. And that includes, these politicized officials at the top of our government agencies and even journalists. I mean, people who are very invested in Washington, the way it is and has been, and the status quo and the power that affords them.
What I would slide in there, though, are the facts of those text messages that we know about from the two lovers, Lisa Page and Peter Strzok, that gave that textured idea of no matter who it is, they're in control. They had a plan to keep the president out of the White House, according to the text messages.
To Melissa's point, and I think you're touching on something that's really important here. You had a group of people, a very small group of people sitting in a room trying to figure out how they could surreptitiously undo a presidency. Yeah. And that's incredibly serious and totally unacceptable. Now, the claims that McCabe is making in his book, that he launched these two investigations because there was so much malfeasance within the new presidency that this man had to be removed, or at least the institutions had to be protected. He's been referred to the U.S. attorney for criminal prosecution after his dismissal, McCabe. So unless he is 100% factually correct about the president's necessary removal, throw the book at him. I mean, that is evidence right there of a deep state.
It just shows so much bias. It shows so much bias that he was having these conversations. I mean, I think that fine, listen to what he says, but take into account that, first of all, he's a liar. We know he's a liar. Second of all, we know that he wants Trump out. He's always wanted Trump out, and he's proved his bias over and over again. And also, he was fired.
Wasn't he fired one day before he got his pension?
Yeah, he maybe wasn't
he lost a lot of money.
So, Kat, my point in bringing up the text messages is, yes, what Kennedy and Melissa are saying, speaks to the issue of trying to get Trump out of office. My point was there was at least some texture or conversation or tone that was going on to keep President Trump out of the office. And Andy McCabe's name was mentioned in some of the text messages between those two.
And that should never happen with people who are in an investigation. You shouldn't be investigating for the sake of getting him out. You should be investigating for the sake of the truth.
They've compromised themselves. Let's say that this stuff is true. Let's say collusion stuff is true. You've compromised the investigation with your personal tweets and stuff like that. You've played your hand. So even if they were going on a hunch or they had some lead to go where they're going, they played their hand. In court, they would be thrown out because they're releasing.
We just put it all on the canvas and we'll see what happens when it wraps up. Republicans putting Democrats on the defensive over Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's tweets that many are seeing as anti-Semitic. How the GOP is making this a huge political issue as Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi comes to the Congresswoman's defense now. Representative Omar not wanting to talk with reporters. Watch.
The president traffic.
What is wrong with you? I tweeted, there's a response. You can run that and have a nice day.
The growing pressure from Republicans on Democrats over Congresswoman Ilhan Omar for tweets many saw as anti-Semitic. Yesterday, the House approving an amendment condemning anti-Semitism. It was seen by many as a rebuke of the Congresswoman, and Speaker Nancy Pelosi forced to come out to the congressman's defense yet again. Pelosi telling reporters a member of Congress has apologized for their remarks. It took them, 13 years to notice Steve King? Don't even waste your time on that. Not to do the agenda of the Republican Party to hold a new young member accountable for something the president himself did not apologize for. And for her part, Congressman Omar getting tired of answering questions on this.
President traffic.
What is wrong with you?
Question about your tweet. You had a tweet saying the president trafficked in hate.
Yes, I tweeted, there's a response. You can run that and have a nice day.
Ooh. Meantime, Jewish leaders from Omar's home district in Minneapolis saying her tweets show a pattern of behavior and say they spoke to her about anti-Semitism last summer, hoping she would change. Minnesota State Senator Ron Lance says, quote, "We were hopeful she would be more careful about what she tweeted, and she said if she got elected. Instead, she keeps repeating her mistakes, if you can call them that." Now, Harris, you have a lot of experience with this part of the country and this group together. They're saying that she has a history of this, and that now as she sits in a place to influence foreign policy, that as she's done things in the past, like show her support for, people that have been fighting on the side of ISIS and this sort of thing, that it makes people nervous.
Well, I don't want to tie that necessarily to Minnesota. I think that Minnesota politics came into play here because
I'm sure that she would want that person to resign. I mean, and to do it repeatedly when you're supposed to be representing, people that include people of the Jewish faith, it's absolutely ridiculous. And she needs to answer for these things and not just say, snap and be rude. It's like, hey, lady, you did this to yourself.
We want to show you on the screen right now, too, as well, that right now the Senate confirmation vote is going on for Attorney General nominee William Barr. That is underway, is expected to go through, but that is what is happening right now on the Senate floor. And we're going to show you the result of that when it comes through. Kennedy, let me ask you, because there's a deeper topic underneath this, and you hear people like Zuhdi Jasser, who talks about the difference between radical Islam and Muslims who are pro-democracy and whose worldview is more in concert with the West. And he has tried to make the point that he does think that this shows that she's coming at this from a different point of view. And that could be dangerous. And it's at least worth getting that out and talking about it, as opposed to saying, well, this one said this racist thing and this one said this. It's more a question about what are her values and where is she coming from?
Yeah, and what are these deeper guiding philosophical principles, and who are the people that she aligns herself with? Because a lot of that is problematic. I know Republicans, including the president, have asked for her to resign or to be taken off the Foreign Affairs Committee. I don't think that's necessary right now.
Right.
I don't think that she's young and naive and she's brand new. She's a rational adult. She knows exactly what she's saying.
Yeah.
This is an informed opinion that she's held for a long time and has expressed it in a myriad of ways pretty consistently, which means she's going to do and say something really stupid in the future that shows her true stripes. And at that point, I think it's time for action. Right now, take her to word, let this go on, because she feels something very deeply that will manifest again.
Absolutely. All right, new reaction from some Democrats as Republicans in the Senate move to vote on one of progressives' biggest new agenda items, that Green New Deal. But some Democrats don't want to talk about it. We'll debate why that is and why Republicans may be calling their bluff.
Pat Boone again.
They're bringing a resolution forward so they can vote against it. This cheap, cynical ploy evidently represents the sum total of Senate Republicans' leadership on the vital issue of climate change. But rather than seriously engage on the issue, our Republican colleagues are taking a page from President Trump's petty playbook, trying to make this a game of political gotcha.
Huh, that's weird. Kavanaugh comes to mind when I hear that term, Chuck. That, of course, the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer with new reaction to Republicans taking aim at the Green New Deal. Now, last night, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell initiated steps to put the resolution up for a floor vote. House Republicans announced yesterday that they put a description of the Democratic proposal into the congressional record. This after the document was deleted from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's congressional website. Democratic Senator Bob Menendez, so lucky to have a job, he had this to say to a reporter from the conservative Daily Caller on Capitol Hill when asked about the Green New Deal. Watch.
I'm wondering why you won't answer questions on the Big Green Deal.
I won't answer questions from the Daily Caller, period. Trash.
Why do you think we're trash?
They'll keep harassing you for bringing to the Capitol.
I don't care if you're the press. You don't have freedom in my book. You're trash. Bob Menendez saying that. That is rich. So if Democrats are so committed to this proposal, and most of the Democrat presidential field, especially those in the Senate, have endorsed the Green New Deal, why wouldn't they, A, want to convince their Republican colleagues of its virtue, and B, vote on it?
You would think.
You would think. Well, you know, I was waiting to see if you called my name. I just think
I'm just looking
it's
at
funny, you know, and I refuse to make eye contact. Just you're hypnotizing. Hashtag not me. What drives me crazy is there's so much fire with the way that President Trump talks to the press. There's so much fire from the Democratic side about it. And apparently they are engaged in the same games. They just call the reporter trash because he asked a tough question.
Yeah.
Which should have been
a legitimate
home
question.
run.
Job.
Which should have been a home run. This was your bill. This is something you're excited about that you're trying to push through. And your answer is, I don't want to talk to you because you're trash.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
And then
now.
I'm going to call Capitol Police.
And it's and then you got Shoemaker talking about
Representative
this has already failed because they're not going to work with us. We are right in the middle of what's always going on. It doesn't matter what the bill is. If you're a Democrat, you like it if it's written by your people. If you're Republican, you hate it, and vice versa. It just seems like the Democrats for so long were throwing so many stones at the Republican Party, saying that they do all these underhanded tactics, they're disrespectful, they say horrible things. Turns out you guys are just as bad, if not worse.
See, that's why it doesn't bother me, because I'm like, now everybody's just being honest.
Yeah,
they're just being honest about what they're saying. They're putting aside the niceties. It doesn't matter to me. You know, reporters, grown-up people. I don't know. I've had people be nice to me as a reporter. People be horrible